Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, September 6th. We just had one of the best openers to an NFL season that I can remember in a very, very long time. We'll talk about all the craziness that led up to the climactic final play between the Ravens and the Chiefs to kick off the 2024 NFL seasons. We'll also go through every single game this weekend, except for the Monday night game, which we'll save for Monday. We're going to preview every single one of them, talk about who I have winning, why I have them winning, which upsets I have. There are 4 upsets and 2 others that I think are on upset alert. Then we're going to take a look at the college football schedule. We're going to take a look at some of the biggest games, 10 of the biggest games and or upset alerts that I wanted to talk about today. Make sure we hit all of those before hitting our world famous Sports by GSMC Podcast Network MLB Power Rankings today. We're going to do a quick look around the world of baseball as we are coming up right to the end of it. It's getting kind of crazy there too. But before we get into all of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the craziness that was week 1 of the NFL season. The first opening game of the NFL season, I should say, and it started off with a bang. I cannot think of a better week 1 opening kickoff game, at least in recent memory. Last year's was pretty good, but this one came down to the wire. It came down to the last play. It came down to the last foot. It came down to the last toe. This game was awesome to watch. We got to see 2 teams that definitely are at the top of the league in a tight competitive AFC. Obviously, it ends with the Kansas City Chiefs, the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions, winning 27-20 over the Baltimore Ravens. This game was everything you could have asked for. It had, again, that ending that came down to the wire. It had a comeback as well. It had some penalties, some controversy, and we're going to get into all of it, starting off with Baltimore. And there were a lot of things to take away from this game from the Baltimore side of things. Aside from the fact that you start off 0-1, we're going to start off with the positives here. The defense looked really good, going up against a really good Chiefs offense, which we'll get to. Their revamped offensive core with the new wide receivers and those weapons, they look kind of unstoppable. It doesn't look very fun, but the Ravens were able to hold them on multiple drives in the red zone to field goals. Props to them. That's a positive. Another positive, Isaiah Likely really came out and showed what he can do, and we'll get into a little more of Isaiah Likely in a little bit. But the negatives, before we get there, Lamar Jackson. I'm going to talk a little bit about the stuff Lamar Jackson didn't do good, but I want to preface this with the fact Lamar Jackson was awesome. Lamar Jackson was the only reason the Ravens were in this game. He rushes for 122 yards. The 14th time in his career he's rushed for over 100 yards. That's 4 more than anybody else in the history of the NFL at his position. It's ridiculous what he does. He was playing with physicality on the ground, and it's not what you want to see out of your quarterback if you're the Ravens, but he played like the best player on the field, and he was the best player on the field last night. Now to get to the part that wasn't very good. The Ravens' offensive line. The Ravens' offensive line was an issue, and it always was going to be the question of this game. We talked about it yesterday when we were previewing it a little bit. The Ravens had 3 new starters. They brought in a bunch of different guys, were transitioning through them. and Chris Jones was destroying them. It almost looked like they were just letting Chris Jones have a free path to the quarterback. And again, this is where I want to point out Lamar Jackson again. There were very few sacks given up last night by the Ravens, and that's because of the pocket presence by Lamar Jackson, his ability, and you can really see it down the stretch, especially in those last 3 plays when Chris Jones basically it's a free rush and you're leaving, a running back to block. Not what you want to do as a team, but Lamar Jackson keeps his eyes downfield, is able to avoid the rush, just moving up and down in the pocket to give his running back a chance. This is not the way that they want it done, but Chris Jones looked like a defensive player of the year candidate last year. He should be in that conversation last night. He should be in that conversation. Chris Jones was a game wrecker. And this went a lot of different ways with the Ravens. The Ravens on their first drive, it was a lot of fun. They got Derrick Henry involved. They gave it to him 6 times on the first drive. He scored the first touchdown of the NFL season. It was just the right kind of game plan that you want to see out of this Ravens team. They come out in the second drive after giving up a touchdown to Xavier Worthy, who Xavier Worthy looked awesome last night. I can't believe the Bills traded that pick to let the Chiefs draft Xavier Worthy. He is going to be a problem for the rest of the NFL. 2 touchdowns on 3 touches, that 21-yard rush on the end around where he barely got touched, rushed past the entirety of that Baltimore defense, and then a wide open touchdown where Marlon Humphreys lets him run past him. No one's going to catch up to Xavier Worthy. He did his thing last night as well. But then the Ravens got away from the run game. And I think that's where they messed up because they went down the field with the run game. I understand when you're down 10 points and you're in a 2-minute drill, you're not going to put Derrick Henry in the game. You're going to leave that to your third down back, right? But when they were the most effective in this game is when Lamar Jackson was doing play actions with Derrick Henry. You saw just the gravity, the pull that Derrick Henry has on these Chiefs defenders, the Chiefs defense that looked really good last night as well. The biggest plays, the plays over the top when they weren't throwing screen pass after screen pass after screen pass, was off of play action. You had the linebackers step up. They went into run mode for a second. Then you were able to loft the ball over their heads and get it to the open guy cutting across the middle. It worked on the first drive. And then they just got away with it. They got away from it. Derrick Henry carried the ball another 7 times all game. 6 times in the first drive, 7 times the rest of the game. And this is kind of what they fell into in the AFC Championship game. They ran out of what they were doing. They stopped running the ball. And that is not what you want to do against this Chiefs team. You want to play your brand of football. And they got caught up in, we need to beat them at their game. The Ravens need to beat them with the Ravens style of football, and they have yet to do that in their last 2 matchups. Lamar Jackson was awesome. Now getting to those that last sequence, those last 3 plays, because that is what this game came down to. The Ravens were down 10 in the fourth quarter after basically being down a possession the whole time. They get a field goal, kick it off to the Chiefs, are able to hold them. They get the ball with 2 minutes left and no timeouts. Lamar Jackson drives 90 yards down the field to get them into a position after a beautiful deep connection with Rashad Bateman down the sideline. The Ravens have, in my opinion, what was their first mistake. They did not clock the ball. The Ravens had no timeouts. Rashad Bateman catches the ball with 36 seconds to go. They don't get a snap off until there is 20 seconds to go, and then that play takes 10 seconds. So you're looking at a 25-second runoff as opposed to, spiking the ball. You don't have to get people set. You just have to get them on the line. You probably have an extra 5 seconds to work with, and I know the argument is saying, hey, you're losing it down anyway. You want to get them on their toes. And to be fair, on that play, Isaiah Likely was open in the back corner of the end zone. If Lamar Jackson is able to put just a little bit less air on that ball, maybe get it there with a little bit more power on it, he is going to score a touchdown on that play and win. Instead, he comes down hard on what looked like a shoulder and has to miss the next play. And then we get into one of the more interesting plays of the whole game, which was the one where, again, you had Chris Jones get through the backfield immediately. Hill blocking, not the guy you want on him, but Lamar Jackson is able to run around in the pocket and keep the defenders blocked as just by moving up and back in the pocket, which is very impressive. It's one of the most impressive things I've seen done with pocket movement in a very, very long time. Justice Hill, not the right matchup for Chris Jones, but he did a very, very commendable job on those last two plays especially. But Zay Flowers flashes wide open across the middle, and it looks like he just misses it. Now, in the post-game interview, and this is something I thought that was really interesting, Lamar Jackson said he wasn't even targeting Zay Flowers. He said he was targeting Rashad Bateman, who, if you go and look at that replay again, Rashad Bateman was in the front line of the end zone. So he airmailed the ball to Rashad Bateman. He was trying to do a jump ball play. Probably not the right one. He said he saw Zay Flowers after he let go of the ball, and if he had, it would have worked because Zay Flowers, if you remember, wide open. No one near Zay Flowers. No one was coming anywhere near those guys. He just a little bit too far to the right of Zay Flowers. They don't connect. And then we get to the heartbreaking part. There's 4 seconds left in the game. Ravens last snap. Lamar Jackson once again, immediate pressure from Chris Jones. Justice Hill has to do his thing and block one of the best pass rushers in all of football. And again, he does a really good job of that. I'm very impressed by his pass blocking and what he had in this game. He finds Isaiah Likely, in the back of the end zone. Looks like he catches it. Unfortunately, his toenail, the tip of his shoe is out of bounds. And that's where the game ends. It also brings up an interesting point. If that touchdown had counted, it looked like they were going to go for 2. And I am of the mindset that that was the right decision. I've heard pushback on that from other people. Some people say, hey, you don't need to go for 2 in that situation. Just take it to overtime. But the Chiefs their offense had been going up and down on the Ravens all night. And, the way that Mahomes in overtime seems to go, you don't want to give him the ball. I like that. I think, honestly, they would have gotten it. If it was me, I would have just handed it to Derrick Henry and seen what happened. But the way they were doing it, I'm not sure if they would have. That offensive line needs some work. This is a team that's going to get better. Now, I don't want to go too hard on the offensive line because, again, a lot of the trouble came with Chris Jones, who is one of the best defenders in all of football. A disruptive force if there ever was one. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about is the usage with Derrick Henry. I know I kind of touched on it a little bit, but he only had 13 carries, half of them on that first drive, and 3.5 yards per carry. Although you could see when they were giving him the ball in the second half, the very limited amount of times that they did give it to him, he was starting to break off runs. He was starting to break off runs of 5-6 yards, whereas before he was getting 1-2 yard runs. It was starting to wear down that defense, a defense that was visibly tired by the end. If they had pounded the rock with Derrick Henry 5-6 more times in this game instead of throwing a screen pass to Zay Flowers, which it's a fine method of offense, but I don't want that to be the main method of offense. If you're going to just do that, I'd prefer you run the ball completely, honestly, because Derrick Henry is going to wear down that defense a way that Zay Flowers is not going to be able to do. Giving him the ball more, I think they would have been able to get something done, but they were able to get down the field, and they were able to score technically. They were just that close. This was an awesome game, and that's my biggest takeaway. This game was exactly what we were waiting for after 200-some days of no football. We finally got a game, and it was everything we could have wanted. Kansas City is going to be amazing this year. It's a little scary, honestly, because they won a Super Bowl last year, and that offense is night and day. Getting to Kansas City, we haven't even gotten to them at all in this segment. Kansas City, my goodness, look at what their offense looks like. That defense, phenomenal. I thought they would take a step back once they lost L'Jarius Sneed, but no, their replacements came in, knocked down a couple passes, had a couple PBUs, almost had an interception. You still have Trent McDuffie, a guy that I really love. His physicality and ability to cover guys is hard to find in corners nowadays. And of course, all the love I've been heaping on Chris Jones, but also George Karlaftis, the rest of that defensive line, the linebacking core. They did a really, really good job in this game, containing as much as you could a very explosive Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely team, right? But getting to the offense, this wasn't a great Mahomes game. Mahomes had one or two plays, and that's about it. Travis Kelce wasn't his game. Xavier Worthy comes through and does his thing. Xavier Worthy, 2 touchdowns, 2 catches, 1 rushing touchdown, right? It's ridiculous that he fell to them. And you take a look at the night and day difference with this receiving core, especially the speed, the amount of space they're able to get over the middle. They were killing them with that quick slant, that slot slant that they kept doing, or short post, I guess you might call it, with Rashee Rice lined up against a linebacker. That felt like that was the only play they were running the entirety of the second and third quarter, especially because they kept getting that one-on-one matchup with the linebacker. Rashee Rice, you partner him up with Hollywood Brown when he comes back. You have Xavier Worthy, who you can do whatever you want with his speed. There's very few guys in the league that can just cover that. Speed is a weapon. Speed kills. And then you're also going to get Hollywood Brown back. You have Justin Watson. You have Juju Smith-Schuster. This offense is going to be a machine. Isaiah Pacheco just never stops moving. It's incredibly impressive what this Chiefs team is able to do. I was trying not to, honestly, I was trying to be a little lower on the Chiefs this year, but they impressed me so much. It's going to be so hard for anyone to knock them off. That Ravens team is one of the best teams in football, and they looked like they were outmatched at basically every level of the game, even though they only lost by 7. But let me know what you think of this game. I thought it was awesome, an awesome way to kick off the NFL season. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at the rest of the NFL slate aside from Monday Night Football. All 14 games, including tonight's between the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We'll talk about all of that and more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.